time, again, welcome. For those of you who know Professor Ghana, we know that he always had the best interest of the students at heart. And that's why he constantly innovated his ways of teaching and continuously found opportunities to enrich his students' learning experiences. And this is how the workshop series was actually initiated, because what he hoped is that these workshops presented by speakers from different backgrounds, from different countries, will help his students to understand and to learn about the current issues and developments in ELT. And once again, thank you, Keith, for continuing to support Professor Ghana's initiative. Thank you. And on behalf of Professor Ghana, I would like to welcome our speakers and to thank them for coming forward to support the School of Education and the University of Nottingham, Malaysia, and to share with our students the contemporary resources for teaching reading and how these materials can be used to supplement school materials to enhance students' reading, and more importantly, to cultivate a love for reading in students. For today's session, our first speaker is Andy. Hi, Andy. Andy is from ELI Publishing. It's a publishing company established for over 40 years. And it has invested in digital publishing, and it puts a lot of emphasis on innovation and creativity in their publications. It produces a range of materials, including supplementary materials, digital books for interactive whiteboard, and also graded readers available as apps for tablets. Andy has been in ELT publishing and training for more than 30 years, and he has worked in over 40 countries. And he's a trainer and also a writer of ELT materials. He's very passionate. So when I was talking to him yesterday, I can see that he's very passionate about developing creative materials. And he is very enthusiastic about inspiring teachers to be innovative and to try new ideas. You can ask him about how to innovate ideas and how to utilize materials creatively. So 1 hour is actually too short of a time. So without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Andy. So over to you, Andy.
Hi there. That's great. Just let me share my screen very quickly and check that, first of all, you can see my slides and my information. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you also see me as well? Is that the other?
Yes, we can see you very clearly.
Now that's not me in the picture, okay? That's not me in the picture. And I'll start now. And I believe I have about 20 minutes with some time for questions at the end. So I'll ask everybody to keep their microphones off, just on mute for the time being, and maybe through chat we can pick up some questions. Normally I would do this very interactively. Maybe one day I can come out east to do the workshops that I love doing so much. But I think for today, what I'm going to do is give a quick overview about the use of graded reading and the value and the materials, of course. And during the presentation, I will be giving you links. And at the end, I will send you these slides. The slides will be available also through my lovely hosts, and also there's a recording. And just to start off with, into the chat, I will just put my details so that you can at least know how to get back to me later. There you go. If you have more than one question at the end, because we won't have much time, but I think you'll find this quite a powerful message for the rest of your teaching. And I'm aware that there are teachers here who are experienced, or some are just beginning. And I think that's great, because I have a chance to really give you a powerful, a mindset, really, is what I'm thinking. So I'm talking about integrating graded reading and how it boosts language learning. And I deliberately choose the picture there. There's my email and my Twitter and Instagram, so you can always contact me. Please do. Please don't see me as this distant face on your screen. I am very willing to answer questions at any time over any period where I can send links and ideas about what we're doing. But I choose this picture deliberately because reading is something that not everybody does, especially the adults and even teachers. And they usually say it's because they don't have much time, they're too busy, and so on. And I just don't believe that. So I just think we have to make time. But the crucial thing is to believe that reading must be easy and enjoyable. I mean, imagine if for the rest of your life, well, let's say the next 10 years, whoever's watching, imagine I told you for the next 10 years, you have to read 3 books per year, and I choose them, and you don't have any choice. You have to finish them, whether you like them or not, or whether you understand them or not. And throughout the whole experience, I will give you questions. 10 years or 12. And of course, that would be terrible. But this is exactly what we do at school. We give the students, most schools I see around the world, there are exceptions, but I've been around the world, and for too long I've seen schools give students reading books they don't like, they don't choose, they can't swap, they have to finish, and they get questions. And then at the end of school, we wonder why kids don't like reading. And it's so simple. So we're going to look at why that happens and how we can quickly change it. But remember that, if nothing else, remember that. The key to students reading is very simple, actually. It's continuing the enthusiasm they had at primary, because usually primary is okay. We like stories, we do reading, the kids love to read, and then it all finishes at secondary because of the exam pressure, because of parents, we could list, I know the list, you could make the list of what goes wrong. And we have the power, even in our own classrooms, to bring reading into the classroom, but to make it easy. And I really find that shocks a lot of teachers, because everybody believes that school must be difficult. Every lesson is too precious to do easy things. Why would I waste my time? And the evidence, the classroom-based evidence of over 30 years, not my 30 years, teaching all over the world in English, says that the more we give students graded reading at their level or below their level, integrated with the classroom course book, for example, you have a powerful boost in results. It's not a feeling, it's not an idea, it's not to make the students happy, it works. And I'm going to show you how. Now, first of all, we have to know and remember why we read. And again, if there was time, I would ask us to think about it, talk about our favorite books, work in pairs. But I think if you look at that list, that's a pretty, there's no other reason for reading. Excuse me. And I think that pleasure goes deliberately at the top. But how many students leave school anywhere in the world, including my country in the UK, which has a good reputation for the education system? Students don't read. And they didn't read before digital distraction. I mean, digital distraction and the lack of attention we give to reading through digital disruption is a problem. It's a problem for everybody. But this was a problem before we had smartphones. And teachers and adults who tell me that they have no time to read, they said this before we had smartphones and the internet as well, all right? So, and yet they are using social media. They're reading Facebook and they're looking at Twitter and Instagram. So where did they find that time suddenly? You know what I mean? So I think it's about how we feel about reading. And I think it all comes down to how we were made to feel about reading as a result of our school experiences. And despite the best schools with the best teachers doing the best they can, I know for sure, that accidentally, by following the system rules, giving students books they don't like, they can't choose, they can't finish, or they have to finish, but they can't swap, followed by essays, followed by comprehension questions. Why would they like reading at the end of that? Nobody would. We break them, actually. I believe it's broken. And I do a talk a lot called Reading is Broken. And we can fix it. Your school may not agree, your headmasters and principals and even your ministries may not particularly want to let students have the choice, but it's my job to find ministries of education and universities and colleges and schools and say, if you do a wider range of readers and replace some of the time in the classroom and homework with reading, you have this. You have the students who learn to read for pleasure after school as well. I mean, after they leave school, for relaxation, we know the benefits of reading. We know we become clever. All these things that we know. But I think that a lot of teachers and schools just tell students that reading is good for them, but they don't actually show them. And then what happens is this. Students believe it differently. That's how they feel. There are always exceptions, but the students don't believe in this list because what they experience is this. And that's because, and you know, we know why, and I'm going to come to why, but we have to remember this is our battle. And there's I think every teacher feels at the back of their mind, they're working so hard, they're pushing and pushing, and something isn't working. Well, how about we give them easy things to read? And I'll show you why that is not just motivating, obviously. Imagine you're in a classroom learning a language and your teacher gives you something easy to read. The students at first, they'll be thinking, well, what's the catch? You know, why are we getting easy things? The keen students will even complain, this is too easy, I want something difficult. Well, that's because we've taught the students to believe every lesson, every moment of every lesson should be difficult. But that's not necessarily evidence-based. It's just a feeling about what school is. Oh, that's school. School's hard. Reading is comprehension. Does it work though? And I think the parents would support the older view, but it didn't work for them either. And the reason reading easily works by finding time to put more reading into the classroom. And I don't mean text for comprehension, and I don't mean random text in course books. I mean graded readers, which we'll look at in a moment. Simplified stories. A graded reader, for those of you who may not even know what a graded reader is, a very short version of a fiction or non-fiction title, reduced to maybe 20, 30, 60 pages at A1, A2, B1, B1 plus level, all according to the framework, the Common European Framework, word length and leveling. It's crucial. And you're going to see a very powerful slide in a moment as to why. But before I do that, what I want to do is just be clear on the basics of the fastest way to learn a language. Now, again, for reasons of time, I'm just going to go through it rather than asking everybody. So forgive me for just talking, but the fastest way to learn a language, you know, is to go to the country, you know, not London necessarily. That's a picture of London, but that picture should represent anywhere where English is the mother tongue. Okay. And why is that? Well, because you're going to hear English a lot, aren't you? You're going to hear it, you're going to see it. But let's remember, okay, we can't send our students to go and live in a country where English is the L1. But let's remember when we do our teaching, why does that work? Well, you hear English every day. Okay. Do you hear all English every day? No. You hear a lot of things quite often. Some things very often, like hello, goodbye, thank you, please, I'm sorry, you know. And then a lot of difficult words that you never hear, you know, like carburetor, part of the engine of the car, or I don't know, the cathode ray oscilloscope in the nuclear reactor. You know, these words are just not, but my point is there are no easy words in a language. There's no difficult word in a language. At the beginning of a language, everything is difficult until you hear some things more frequently, right? So, you know, if you think about a child language acquisition, it's the same as learning a language in a country. A child only learns words which are frequent. Yes, if you're thinking we learn words we need, that's also true. But the child is going to know words like milk, daddy, mummy, hello, you know, toilets, whatever. Now, these words we hear as children, and when we're first in that country learning a language, let's say English, we will hear and start to remember the high frequency words. Not easy words. They're not easy. If I went to well, if I went to China and I have no Chinese at all, and I heard the Chinese for hello, but I also heard the Chinese for carburetor, the part of the car, I would have no idea which was which. They are equally difficult. What makes a word easy is frequency. And the problem in language teaching is that by using only course books, which are fine, I've written course books and I'm going to show you one, but they only do part of the job if you use a course book, which is to show new language, but they don't repeat it. Not really. That's not their job. Their job is to show new language, test it to see the students understood it, and then they move on to the next structure, because we have a lot of language to teach. So where's the recycling? Okay, some course books have recycling units. It's not enough. It's not enough. And you know it won't be, because we know that we need to see words more often to actually learn them, and in context, which takes me into stories, which is why stories are so important in language learning. And the word story always makes teachers and some parents uncomfortable, because stories are for children, but they're not for adults. Well, we know that's wrong, but there's a mindset out there would have you believe that stories are just childish, but stories are everywhere, and we all tell stories. You'll tell stories today when you go home, and we repeat language when we do so. Now, here's the Arabic word for stop. I have no Arabic, but I've traveled in Morocco, and I saw this sign which means stop. Maybe from context you can tell that it means stop, and it's the same with the Turkish word, which is exit, and I know another word in Russian for stop. Now, yes, I have learned a lot of different words in different languages, not necessarily from road signs, but certainly from frequency of input. Frequency of input. Now look at that Arabic word. I don't know. I mean, it's so difficult, but I think there's something very beautiful about the letters. So I like that. But I saw it once, I completely forgot it. I saw it again, I noticed it again. I thought it looked a little bit like a boat, a canoe with two people, and I remembered it, and I thought 2 dots and 1 dot. You know, I did a bit of active learning, but I don't need it. I know that I should stop. I'm at the end of the road. I don't need the Turkish for exit. I don't need the English, because I know that I'm looking at the exit. So look, here's another good example. Now look, this is my mum and dad. All right, they live near me now. They're both 89. They're a bit younger here. That German word at the bottom means diversion in German. Umleitung. Umleitung. And I used to teach in Germany when I first was a teacher for a number of years. They used to visit me. They used to drive from the UK and visit me. And they didn't learn any German. My dad tried to learn a little bit. Okay. And he got a book and he went through the different phrases and expressions and grammar. My mum didn't try. That's fine. My mum's clever, but she didn't try and learn German. And so she still remembers the word Umleitung.
Mama angry or not?
Could we turn the microphones off just quickly? Microphones off. Thank you very much. And my mum, when they first arrived, they thought this was a sign for a place, because this word diversion, like road, right, diversion from roadworks, they thought it was a road sign for like a city like Berlin. And we joked. Now, because they made a mistake and they said, oh, we thought it was a city, it means diversion. Well, we joked, but that's not how she remembered it, because if my parents never saw that word again, it would be completely forgotten. But they drove many times in Germany. They saw the word many times. And remember this word, by repetition of exposure, taught itself to them. This Arabic word, I don't even know how you say it. I can only write it. The writing of this word in Arabic for stop taught itself to me. You see, and that's what happens when we visit the country. That's what happens when we're children. We hear or see things so often, it goes in. Now, the trick is to replicate that experience in the classroom day in and day out. And the only way you can do it, and if we agree this is effective, because it is, then we must find a way to balance the formal, traditional, difficult learning of language, the mechanics, the grammar. That's necessary, but you have to balance it with something that does this. And that's where readers come in. Paul Nation, another great writer and trainer in the field of ELT, he says, we do not learn a word from one meeting. Research tells us that it takes between 5 to 16 meetings or more to learn an average word, which is true. And Rob Waring is a great exponent on the field of extensive reading, which we'll talk about. He says we don't have enough time to teach everything about a word. Students have to become independent word learners, which is absolutely true. And that doesn't mean giving them a list of words and then a vocab test on Monday. That doesn't work. I mean, you're forcing the words in, but it's like pushing something down a plug hole. It doesn't want to go because the brain doesn't like lists. It likes context. It likes repetition, but it likes context. So Let's look at a coursebook page. Perfectly normal coursebook. This comes from one of the coursebooks from ELI Publishing, for whom I do a lot of training and consultancy. And there you can see a typical page, very nice design, some text, some questions, some pictures. This is about mind and body, short texts, introducing language, testing, and then skills work, followed by some workbook, okay? And there's nothing wrong, it's great. That's what the coursebook does. It shows you new language. It gets students to really kind of understand the mechanics of it. Then we do some homework, I guess, to figure out, did they understand the grammar? But that's it. I mean, that's, if you use course books and workbooks for 10 years or 15 years, or certainly in the secondary schools, you've got a problem. Because although it gives you a roadmap through the syllabus of English, it reduces English to a subject for learning and not a communication skill. We're teaching a skill, not a subject. A student could get, high marks on passing grammar tests. Does that make them a good communicator? And we know all about 21st century skills is now saying to teachers of English, look, you're teaching English, but they've got great writing and grammar, but they don't know how to influence or empathize or work in teams or lead. But my point is this, with a perfectly decent coursebook like this, followed by a workbook, you're teaching new language, but you're not giving them meaningful practice, which is why we have to use texts that are in stories or nonfiction. This is from Treasure Island. We haven't got time to read these things, but this is what it looks like, a page with some pictures. This is a younger learner book, but you can find readers for any age. Readers are for everybody. And once you have readers in the classroom, making time in the classroom, which I do a workshop on implementing readers, but for today, I'll direct you to where you can do this. If you read aloud from a reader every day at your lesson for 5 minutes, that's great. Make it easy. Make it interesting. Ask them what they like. Ask them in a survey what books they want to read, because then you can talk about characters. And then you can start to bring in the things from course books that normally are like exercises for the teacher, exercises for the parents. But if you start to use the content of the stories, and let's remember, we're going to ask the students what they like, and we're going to pick short, easy stories, because we're not testing English here. We're getting them to use the English they know in order to use it and practice it effectively. And something other than this is a real game changer, which is the way that the leveled text repeats language over and over. And you'll see that it's beautiful, because these books are not easy to write. They've got to be written to make a student understand a story, the characters, the themes. It's not literature, I understand. Some teachers say, oh, Treasure Island, or, Pride and Prejudice. This is a reader. This is not literature. No. And there's no way the students will understand literature unless we help them with this sort of scaffolded, simplistic approach. You can do all sorts of activities. And I'm going to send you some links on how to do activities with readers that don't really test them. We don't want students to feel that reading a story leads to a test, because that kills reading. But there are language exercises you can do, and ELI's readers have all those sorts of things built in. And hey, if you really need to do grammar and vocabulary exercises, well, it's much more fun to do them in the context of a story that they're all reading. Now, let me just show you a quick example of something from the graded reader at A2 level from Gulliver's Travels. Now, quickly, I'm going to take a short 30 seconds while you read that very quickly. There's no test at the end. Just read it to yourself. Okay, so I hope you're a fast reader, because I'm moving on quickly. I think you can see pretty quickly that it's quite easy to read. Great. If I had students who were A1, I wouldn't use this text. If I had students A2, I would. If I had students who were B1, I would use it. When I say this text, I mean we would read the whole story in 1 week. It's so short and so simple, maybe in 2 weeks maximum. Why? Well, because you do need to do one or two, well, quite a few readers with the class. And I would like to do a session one day on how you do this, but the resources I show you will show you how. It's not to test their comprehension. It's that if they're reading more and more often, look what happens. look what happens. When a text, when a story is leveled and graded, by definition, the words are limited to tell the story. Otherwise, nobody would understand it. If it's leveled, that means you're going to use the same kinds of words over and over again. Does a language student complain? No, they love it. Do they notice it? I don't think so, which is great, because now they don't realize that they're learning. If they choose from a little library of books, a library can be 20, 30, 40 books, not a building, just a selection of readers in the classroom, and the teacher is building with them a sort of culture of reading alongside their day-to-day classroom work and homework, and they are only picking books they like, the student likes, and it's only easy, then the students are reading for pleasure. They are reading for pleasure, but what they don't realize, and you have a little assistant here, is that they are seeing the words over and over again. And the general rule on asking students to read graded readers is that they only have maybe 4 or 5 words per page that they do not understand. No more. Any more than that, it demotivates them, they stop reading, and they shouldn't have to look up any words. Encourage them to read without stopping. Read fluently. If I'm reading a book and I'm constantly stopping and I can't understand it, I hate it, I want to stop. And so we reverse the broken reading in classrooms by doing this, by giving students access to wide varieties of titles. And this is what happens. I mean, it's not even vocabulary, is it? You've got grammar. Look at was, wasn't, was. There's like 5, 6, 7, 8 examples in about, this is about, I don't know, 100 words, 150 words. And how many times do you get the students to learn was and went and thought? All those irregular verbs are normally listed at the back of a course book, and nobody wants it. Nobody likes it. And this is great. It is a game changer. And it's not for students who like reading, and it's not if you have a little bit of time. You've got to strike the balance. This is what we're doing normally with course books, with texts. We give them difficult, short text with tests, no choice. No one gets a chance to walk away and find something else. I mean, come on, if you're reading a book and you don't like it, normally you give up and get another one. Well, we have to teach students that that's okay too, right? And you do this with graded readers. So extensive reading is the opposite of course book reading. It doesn't replace it, it balances it. And most of the time, I find hardly anybody in schools does this. And they maybe choose one reader for the whole year. Well, that's terrible, because how do you know the class likes it? And even if it was, you know, Harry Potter or something, all the students would hate it by the end because of the school treatment we give it. Now, remember, what I'm saying here is all evidence-based. It's not a feeling from me or a nice idea. It is an essential approach to teaching English. And many schools don't do it because they don't understand it. They don't read about it. And I'm asking you to really get to know it. Work with your colleagues to do it. And the parents may not understand it, because parents may not wonder, they may wonder, why are you giving my child easy reading? And you'll have to explain, or I can help you with letters. We do this and say, look, it may have been different when you were at school, but did you actually like it? Do you read? You know, and this is how it changes. So you balance extensive reading with the course books, and you give them a library. A library can be a bag of books, give students a chance. So you choose, and here's Ellie. Ellie has hundreds of books. I work with them in their graded readers department, and ask the students, use the covers from the catalogs to decide what they think the books would be about. And maybe with your school, you buy the books that, oops, sorry, that's me reminding myself that I should finish. These are different genres, talking to kids about things that they like, and they can be curious and then encouraged to read. And if they really like, for example, the book about New York, one student wants to read about New York, but it's too difficult, say, look, okay, it's too difficult, don't read it, and don't do tests. Let me find you something else, and they'll soon get up to the level to read it. But they must be reading according to their choice and below their level, yeah, because they do a lot of work above their level in the course book. They do plenty of challenging things. So have a look at the catalogue. This is the catalogue from ELI Graded Readers, and you can choose and build small book libraries, just a bookshelf in the classroom, to supplement it. Look up extensive reading, reading lots, reading often to get the exposure, all right? Google it, extensive reading, and there's a website of a resource by experts who've all done the preparation. They've been through the pain of rethinking their lessons, called ER Central. And ELI has a free guide on how to use their readers, which you can download from eligradedreaders.com. All of the links are going to follow in the chat in a moment, including my slides. And there's some recommended reading on my website, which is ELT Connections, all the books you'd need to really understand what goes wrong in schools to make students believe that reading is boring, and what teachers have done to change it, including the way we use graded reading. And I'll send that link in a moment. And there's a couple of 1-hour videos that I've done for ELI on their multimedia, their ELI Multimedia YouTube channel. Those links are all about longer versions of what I've been saying here, how to use them, why we should use them, and overcoming the obstacles in schools which you may feel are in the way. And you can, but you can really bring in other resources. I love, look at this, I've got lovely games and puppets and things for the younger ones and the older ones. They have games too, to make learning much more sort of hands-on and multi-sensory. The games, I think they have the largest collection of games at ELI from any other language publisher. So I often incorporate games with the readers too, and they can be on any topic or any language area. So you can check those out from ELI as well, and contact me if you need more information. And I think that's the fastest I could do it for you, but I'm going to hang around for any questions in the chat if you need it. And in the meantime, I'd like to say thank you for everybody for letting me speak here today and offer you a chance to see extensive reading. And I'm going to put some links into the chat and hope that you would really investigate, let me just put them in here, more about it and try to incorporate it more into your all classrooms, really, especially when you're teaching the teenagers. Right, I think that's me done. Any questions? And I'll be happy to help. I hope that's not overrunning your time.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you. Any questions from the floor? We can take in one, maybe like one question for now, and then we can have more questions later if you have any for Andy. Any questions? All right, I think there's one question on the chat.
Okay. Let's have a look. There's all my links. If you want to use my links and ideas, please look them up. There's some great posts there about it. I'm an advocate for CBI. Probably, yeah, Clill. Since you deal with stories and language, it's natural you are with, yeah. Well, the thing is, bringing students up to level, the question is, how to bring them up to the level where immersion is effective. I personally have never seen any sort of happy scenario where students are forced to be in English all the time, constantly like swimmers underwater. And so whenever I was teaching, wherever I could, I would allow the use of another language in the classroom if it helps the students, as long as I reached my outcome at the end of the lesson, as long as I reached my language teaching goal. So for example, if I'm brainstorming, supposing I held up this puppet, right? And okay, it looks like a primary thing, so it is primary. But, maybe I could brainstorm from the students colors and character, and I would do it. And if I had the chance with a monolingual class, I would ask them to talk to me in the language, not English, because I want them involved just for 1 minute. 1 minute won't kill me to hear if I know the language, and then I can start to get the language. The reason is I find students are constantly feeling that they are pushed below the water and they can't breathe. And students who might have something to say don't have the language, so they don't say anything. And so that's my own way from practice that does it. I also think that if we immerse students too much in too much language, especially reading, it puts them off. I mean, we know it does. And so giving them a chance to read at their own level allows for mixed ability. It accommodates the very obvious fact that we have different interests, and the more they read, the better they get. The more they read easily, the better they get. That's what I mean. There's a counterintuitive feeling that if we are reading difficult things all the time, that we will get better, but that isn't the way it works. And I think that's why people push back, because they feel from their own school experiences, no, we must read difficult things. That's learning, isn't it? Well, yes, you can challenge the students a little, but don't do it all the time. And that's how I feel about reaching the higher levels. But look at the evidence. When you look at extensive reading, the evidence is there from reading widely and easily. You build up a feeling for the language, the way words go together. And that's what we know is a wonderful feeling, when we know there's a feeling about collocations. And that doesn't come from course books. It comes from repetitive engagement with stories or non-fiction reading at or below their level. Any other questions? I'm wary of time. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, we do have some questions, but I think maybe we need to proceed with the next presentation.
Yeah.
We can come back to the questions later.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, my email is in the chat. Okay, I'm going to put it there again. If anybody wants to email me for any information, I have the slides. I've put them in there as well. Email me, and I'll be more than happy to help you. I'd like to say a big thank you to everybody for inviting me, and to good luck to all the other speakers. And I hope you'll go away and apply what you see, because it's application that makes it work. Everyone, have a great day.
Thank you.
One more point to add, the ELI showroom will be ready in 2 weeks. It's under renovation now. So once it's ready, we'll invite you. There's a table that have all the meeting conferencing tools and stuff like that. You can actually play with the box, the language games, look at all the kind of books, the approach and so on and so forth. And one thing that you really need to know is that the way they design the readers, the books, the color, and so on and so forth. Because ELI is Italian, they're the largest publisher in Italy. And all the ELI guys, all the Italian guys will say that they are sexier than the British. So their books is going to be very sexy too. So take a look when you're free the next time.